Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a webinar for today, which is titled The Role of Standards and Standardization in the Age of AI. But before we kick off and we start introducing our speaker for today, I just want to spend a few minutes just introducing you to the IT division, South African Institution of Civil Engineering, IT division. And so the focus of the SAICE Information Technology Division is to add value to educating our industry on new technologies, new developments, for example, 4IR, that's the Fourth Industrial Revolution, artificial intelligence, BIM, cloud collaboration, both from a hardware, software, and human perspective, and to help to reimagine our workflows through sort of 2025 and beyond. In line with our objectives, the division seeks to expose new technologies that may become useful to the civil engineering profession, particularly as the traditional boundaries between engineering disciplines are becoming increasingly fluid. We'd like to serve our members by providing relevant content timelessly, always taking cognizance of their needs. We want to attract more professionals into the industry, particularly by encouraging both young and older professionals to become aware of new technologies, whilst always maintaining regard to the social, environmental, and economic impact. The SAICE IT division currently has 8 committee members that serve our under various portfolios, such as events, marketing, communications, student outreach, a sustainable infrastructure working group, the SAICE infrastructure report card, just to mention a few. We hold regular monthly committee meetings to plan and coordinate our activities. We've currently got about 863 members, 76% of which are based in the main metros. That'll be Durban, Johannesburg, Pretoria, and indeed in the Western Cape branches. If you're a student, we'd like to encourage you to to join us, but you remember you've got to provide proof of your studies each year so that you can continue with your membership, which is no charge. It's free for a student. If you don't provide that information, then your membership sort of goes on hold. SAICE IT division's webinars are held fairly regularly and are not only advertised to the IT division, but also to all members of SAICE. So this encourages SAICE members that are not necessarily members of the IT division to have the opportunity to join IT-related events and consider membership of the division. Also like to quickly mention that social media pages, that's in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and of course our SAICE IT division website. Just to note that if you would like to ask questions, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And please put your questions in the chat so that we'll be able to find them and read them out and ask our presenter to answer your questions. So with that done, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, which is Jugal Makwana, and I'm just going to give you a bit of his CV. With over 25 years of experience in the AECO industry, Jugal is dedicated to driving digital transformation across architecture, engineering, construction, and operations. Throughout his career, Jugal has led various industry transformation initiatives, fostering innovation through open standards, digital twins, and AI. He has also served as Vice Chair and Director on the BSI board, championing the adoption of open BIM standards to promote sustainable development globally. Jugal is passionate about simplifying complex concepts and influencing cross-functional ecosystems. They are committed to empowering the digital future of the built environment. Currently, his role at Autodesk, Yugal focuses on industry transformation through a strategic open ecosystem, collaborating extensively with leading technology providers. So as we navigate the age of AI, Yugal believes that standards will play a crucial role in unlocking the full potential of AI technologies, ensuring interoperability and driving sustainable growth in the AECO industry. So with that introduction, I'd like to hand over to Jugal to take us through his presentation this afternoon. Jugal, if you'd like to take over now. Jugal, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now and see
Yes,
me?
that's better. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Peter and Debbie and Chris, for this kind invitation. And looking forward to sharing some of my experience on this very interesting topic. And thank you all for those who have joined in. And as Peter said, we will have question and answer towards the end. Unfortunately, I only have an hour to talk about this. I can talk about this for an entire day, but let's start with an hour of today, and we'll try to give you as much context and insight as I can on this topic. As I see, over 200 of you have joined in, which is great. So this topic is certainly interesting. I also noted that many of you have your AI assistants enabled for you to take notes out of this, which is very nice. So many of you are already, I would say, front runners in leveraging AI in your daily work. In this context, this was an interesting topic that came up and has been in conversation in several parts of the world. So I thought this probably would be interesting and relevant for uh, all of us to kind of discuss and share. Now, as Peter mentioned, I work for Autodesk, and I will be showing few things about some of the technology direction that Autodesk is taking. So some of these are planned features and functionality, which may or may not end up in all the products. But this is to show you what are the possibilities in technology. Now, when we started discussing, there were a lot of questions that one had to kind of look at, and we started kind of talking about this topic some time back, and one of the questions that came up was on standards and standardization. And then there's, oh, what is the difference between standards and standardization? How does it differ? How is AI different compared to the past technological innovations that our industry had to go through in terms of BIM and all of those? And then because now AI is something that can work with structured, unstructured data, then again, the question of, okay, is standardization still relevant or standards are still relevant? And what does standardization mean in terms of AI? Can AI help us in our daily work apart from note taking and everything else? And what lessons can we learn from our past experiences on adopting BIM and everything else around it? And then what are some of the best practices? And towards the end, I would talk about what can you do in your daily work to kind of try and do things differently. So these are some of the topics that I will try to cover through the presentation. Now, before I kind of go in detail, I thought I'll share my perspective on standards and standardization. So, standards, in a way, is something that is ensures quality and safety across the different industries. And standardization is something that promotes consistency and efficiency in the process. So you can have things which are standardized, but they may not be standards, and then you may have standards which may not have been adopted. So I was trying to find something that kind of truly shares as an example. So I like this one, wherein I'm sure many of you who have kind of worked over these last few years on computers and laptops and stuff would have seen all of these ports on our laptops, right? So each of them had a different purpose. One was a LAN, the other one was display, then the USB and headphone jacks and power and all of those. And then recently, they've kind of put forward some standards. And let's say USB-C now is a standard wherein they say, okay, if we have USB-C that can work as a power inlet, that can work to connect with our monitors, that can also work to, let's say, connect with our headphone and charge our phones and all of that. And in the EU, they actually have a directive. But then when we look at the practical side of things, the laptop doesn't have those connectors, but that doesn't mean that it has been standardized, right? So at the other end, we end up using adapters. I'm sure many of you might find this familiar, right? All of us have these adapters where we try and connect, whether it is from a power perspective. So having a standard doesn't guarantee standardization. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we have. And again, the whole purpose of standards, so let's say the EU standardized USB-C because they thought, okay, we would get 250 million in savings because you won't need multiple ports and all of that. But then we find people ending up buying some of these adapters to do things or make it work. So standardization and standards can only work if the entire industry and ecosystem actually work together to ensure that it is adopted. So in that context, I will kind of have, would like to share my journey, and Peter did share in terms of I have had a couple of decades of experience, and I call it my learning journey because I have had to, in those couple of decades, I've seen things moving and progressing significantly. So when I did my civil engineering a few years back in India, I started learning about 2D and things like that. And then when joined my professional career, we transitioned. I started as a highway road design engineer, doing road design alignment and all of that, and then getting into BIM. Spent a lot of time in technology firms where we kind of were looking at BIM and the benefits of BIM, then moved to AECOM in Singapore, where I was the BIM lead, where I got to work on some of the very large projects that I'll talk about. And then I joined the Building Smart International board to kind of see how we can drive the adoption of BIM and open standards globally while I was working at Royal Haskoning DHV, which is a multidisciplinary consulting firm where I led the BIM and digital engineering program. And now with Autodesk, with the focus on industry transformation, and in throughout these journey, I've had to learn new acronyms every few months. And over the last 2 years, the acronyms have just skyrocketed. So every few weeks, there's something new. When it comes to AI, every week there's a new announcement. So that learning journey continues and has accelerated. And some of the let's say key aspects of these journeys were kind of I was lucky to have some opportunity to work on some very interesting projects. So when I graduated, I was fortunate to be part of the teams that were delivering the National Highway Improvement Development Program, which had close to 6,000 kilometers of improvement. And in 4 years that I was working as a highway and road design engineer, or road and rail design engineer, I designed over 600 kilometers of road and rail, and did that all in 3D. Had to learn all of that and get it implemented. And it was one of the first programs in India which had a mandate around 3D, which was in the early 2000s. I was also fortunate that I could kind of one of the projects was to work for World Bank, where I had to do road investigation and survey from the southern part of India to the northern part of India. This is roughly 4,000 kilometers, and I had to travel all of this by road. And one of the challenge in that was that we had roughness meter feet fitted on a car, which could only travel at 40 kilometers per hour. So it was a long journey, but I learned quite a lot in that. And then a few years down the line, I moved to Singapore, where I worked with AECOM, and some of the most exciting projects where I got an opportunity to work and implement BIM on. This is one of those projects, which is the high-speed rail project, which was proposed between Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. One of the most ambitious project, which was put on hold due to political reasons. But this is by far the most exciting BIM project that I had worked on. And then the other is in Singapore, they're working on this new terminal, airport terminal, Terminal 5 at Changi, which is a mammoth terminal. And again, this was a BIM project right from its concept, and now as well they're implementing it. It is going to kickstart in 2030, but the whole implementation of BIM started right from day one. And then apart from infrastructure project, I've also kind of got the opportunity of working on some water and other projects. So this is one of those desalination plant projects in Singapore, which was all implemented on BIM and integrated digital delivery, which I'll talk about later. But all of these projects were very unique in itself, but there were also a lot of common standards which actually helped us work on these diverse projects. Now, what is common in many of these projects is, let's say, when I did my civil engineering, I was trained on the analog method, right? So I was trained to do drawings on drawing board with paper and stuff. But then when I joined the professional career, I had to learn CAD and then learn BIM and all of those things as time went by. And then we went into the whole connected BIM era. All of this has been something which has been transitioning part of the journey. And what is interesting is that as an industry, we have adopted and transformed, but we still have a long way to go. So what we've done is we've, let's say, added BIM on top of CAD. We've added connected BIM on top of BIM and CAD. So we haven't really let go of any of our legacy processes, but we are continuing. So what has also happened is that in this process, let's say, we have been able to kind of now move towards outcome-based BIM, where we focused on how AI and everything else around us help us deliver the kind of outcome that we need. So we say keep the end in the mind and let's to work towards achieving those outcomes. In this journey and in this transitions, the standards have also evolved. And let's say when we moved from 2D to CAD, we had, let's say, CAD standards which kind of identified what kind of layers would you want, what should be the color and nomenclature of those layers, how should you structure that, what should, let's say, alignment, color, and line thickness and line width and style be towards the road end and all of that. And then when we went into the 3D world, there wasn't a lot of guideline beyond that, but then we had exchange formats like so IFC, which is the industry foundation class, is one of those exchange format, which became a standard to facilitate interoperability between the different softwares. When we came to BIM, people realized that oh, BIM is not just about 3D modeling. The way I position BIM is I call it better information management. So it is not just about building information modeling, but it is about better information management to ensure that we create it in a better way, we manage it, we share it in a better way, and we connect it in a better way. And that is where, let's say, standards like ISO 19650, now there are standards around digital twins are relevant. So these standards have played a crucial role in our journey and transition and the transformation. Now we talk about AI, right? So there are few things around AI, not a lot of standards, but there are policies, and like EU is one of those first countries to have an AI Act. Now, what has happened is that these standards have formulated or become a guideline to how things should be done or can be done, and all countries and all regions have adapted or adopted it in the way they found it suitable. So, like when I was in Singapore, we started on the journey beyond BIM. So we looked at, okay, what does connected BIM and what does outcome BIM based BIM look like, and what would be required to achieve that. And in that context, we kind of there was part of a committee which kind of developed a framework which was to take us forward and go beyond BIM, go beyond connected BIM, and it was called the Integrated Digital Delivery Framework. This is what is currently being adopted in Singapore, where it talks about digital design, digital fabrication, digital construction, and digital asset management. So digital is a thread throughout the project delivery process. And that thread, again, Singapore has a very pragmatic program. So they said, oh, what can we do with this? What can we do within digital design or digital construction? So some of the projects that I had worked on, whether it was the desalination plant or the high-speed rail projects, we looked at, okay, can we have a completely digital RFI, which is if can we transform the request for information, put it on a cloud platform so that there's no paper involved in it. Can we do those visual and design checks in a different manner? So there, the building construction authority had put together a BIM studio there way back in 2015, where we actually used to do our design collaboration meetings with client and everyone together, where we used to look at the whole model in a 3D projection, like a movie theater, and then see, okay, this works or this doesn't work. So that also helped significantly. And then there were mandates around, let's say, all the drawings should be extracted from the BIM models. And BIM models had to be then submitted as referral documents. Now they've moved beyond referral and getting into formal approval. So they want to move from, let's say, CAD or drawing or a 2D drawing as a legal document towards model being a legal document towards the end, so that it can facilitate digital fabrication and construction and all of those. Some of those projects way back in 2015, 16, we also tried to, we said CDE is integral to the whole success of IDD and BIM. So the common data environment was adopted. And then on top of common data environment, we also realized, oh, we also need to kind of standardize on what should the model contain. So if we had a pump, we had to ensure that, okay, all pumps have a certain level of information in design, construction, and operation and maintenance. And then also look at what would other entity, whether you are working on a road or rail projects, try and coordinate that. In many of those projects, we also were able to kind of put the BIM model as a contractual document. So in tender documents, those BIM models were offered, the design BIM model from consultants were offered to contractors to work on a cost estimation and their tender responses. That was also quite beneficial. Now, what was the outcome that came out of it? As an outcome, what happened was, so they kind of measure what is the benefit of doing all of these things. So they said, okay, if we do BIM and if we do this IDD, we have a potential of improving our construction productivity by 20%. Now, Singapore, as of now, is the second most highest construction productive countries in a way, but they still thought they wanted to be better. So they have metrics that definitely see the value of digitalization and standardizations. But that is one country. And then when we look at other parts of the world, let's say in EU, there is obviously a lot of focus on BIM and digitalization. And there's actually a EU BIM task group, which looks at what is the standardization or maturity of the EU countries in when it comes to BIM. So what you see is a lot of these countries embarked on their standardization journey a long time back on BIM, but there is still a huge difference between the maturity of all of these countries. So let's say some of them have approved BIM strategy, others are still preparing it. Many of them have mature procurement process, but half of them still don't have it. Majority of them use CDE, but then there are many who still don't use it. So there is no right or wrong answer in here, and we see the maturity in multiple levels and across a spectrum, a maturity on how people create information, how people share information, how people or projects collaborate and connect. So there is a huge diversity in it, and that diversity also reflects in some of the way projects are being delivered. So I actually was curious when I was preparing for this presentation to get a perspective from ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT around, I said, let's talk about standards and relevance of standards, and which is one of the most craziest but relevant standards for the AEC. So this was a generic question, and then ChatGPT came back with this. And it says IFC, which is the Industry Foundation class, which is one of the standards from Buildings Fund International, where Autodesk is also a strategic member, and we work quite closely to ensure that the Autodesk products are compliant to IFC. So we do support it, but it says it is one of the craziest standards because it has been around for a couple of decades and it's still evolving. So the work that we put on standardization and standards is a continuous process. There is no end to it, right? So we always keep improving it. And then a lot of people think IFC is a file format, but it is a schema, and that schema needs to evolve. So now, let's say IFC, we are now working towards delivering or creating an IFC which could work on the cloud collaboration format. So let's say it goes beyond desktop applications like AutoCAD or Revit or Civil 3D, but more on the cloud perspective. And IFC, we believe, is integral to succeed in our ambitions because it is an open and interoperability standards. And we know all of you would use different softwares from different technology providers, but we would want them to integrate and interoperate with each other. So it is important. And a lot of people are passionate about what IFC does. So although people, let's say they use it, but they also complain quite a lot, the people who create it. So it is a constant evolution. And then if you want more details on what is the current maturity of the adoption of these standards, you can go to the Building Smart International website. They released a latest edition of the IFC mandates earlier this year, where they talk about what are the different mandates in different parts of the world, which I think is also very relevant for South Africa as it embarks on this maturity journey. Now, one of the other parts of this journey of outcome-based BIM is the transitions or transformation of the business models, right? So as technology has evolved, it has actually helped us as an industry, whether you are a consultant or contractors, it has helped us wherein our business models are evolving, right? So like the initial business model that we had was around time and material. So let's say you'll say, okay, yeah, I am an engineer. I'm going to spend 20 hours drafting a drawing. So you pay me 20 hours plus the material or how many pages and all of that stuff goes in. And then we transition to a project-based lump sum integrated design build contract. And all of that was result of how we succeeded in embedding standards and standardize our workflow enabled by technology, which were able to, let's say, give us a prediction of, okay, how much is this going to cost? Can I afford it? So all of that happened as done. And now when we talk about AI actually is transforming a lot of things, and we are focusing on outcome-based BIM, or we are focusing on performance as an outcome. and we don't know how to monetize that. Yes, so let's say as a consultant, let's say a client might come to you and say, okay, I need a building, give me a building. Now with AI and generative design, we have a lot of flexibility on how we can do this, right? So we can actually now look at these buildings and generate multiple alternatives of that, right? So you can say, okay, what if I do steel or precast? What if I do timber? So you can experiment with material and generate the option. And with AI and generative and parametric modeling, all of this is now possible. In the previous business model, each of these would have been four different contracts to four different consultants who would specialize in these, and the client would go and say, okay, give us a result, and then they would say, oh, this works or this does not work. So these could be four different contracts, four parallel companies working on it. But now the technology has features and functionality when one consultant can actually do all four of these and integrate and give the client an advice on what would be the best structure or framework for them be, depending on material, depending on sustainability and things like that. And then we can go even a step beyond where we are now integrating standardization and industrialization together, wherein we look at, when you say end in the mind, so we say, okay, if I want to design a certain building, what is my carbon emission going to look like, right? How many stories should I have? How many units will I have? So we can calculate all of these things and connect that on a AI platform. All of these, again, are features and functionalities that are available today that you as consultants and designers and architects can start using it. And this, all the complex math is something that the platform enables. So a lot of projects are now looking at industrialization or, as I say, productization of the projects and make it more configurable and see how we can do it. And then obviously AI, a lot of people think AI as large language models, but it's beyond that. It is about vision and a lot of things as well. But then you can now integrate those large language models into your 3D model or BIM model. This is an example of how one of the customers integrated ACC, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, with the ChatGPT API, and then you can have a conversation with it. It's okay. Can you highlight the beams and how many beams do I have? How many beams are on level 2 or level 1? And then it kind of gives you the result. So what AI is going to do is going to change how we interact with information, how we consume information, and that is what is going to be crucial in the stages that we do. Now, standardization is key to doing this. So imagine if, let's say, if an engineer would have used a 3D object, which was actually designated as a column, but you placed it as a beam. So the AI platform would still believe that that is a column and not a beam, so it would not show it, right? So there are still, all of this can only work if there is a standardized structure around what it means. Now, what we've also seen is that a lot of these developments in AI are now being democratized. So a lot of the platform technology have AI, machine learning algorithms inbuilt into that so that you can start extracting and using it. So whether it is, let's say, symbol detection in drawings or tagging your photos or extracting specifications, a lot of these things, features and functionalities are now already being embedded in these applications that you would use on a day-to-day basis. It is a matter of now adopting it. And what is crucial is, as I mentioned, standardization is a key. Although AI works on unstructured data, but the value of structured data and the insights that you get out of those structured data is much higher. So, because let's say we, as engineers, we design assets or buildings or roads which are going to be lasting for generations or decades. And we have to be absolutely sure the outcome that was delivered was based on standards, based on the criteria required, because we are not doing, let's say, DALI drawings and images where even if, let's say, something is put wrong, it works. Not, it doesn't work for our project. So we have to be absolutely sure. And the only way to be sure about that is to focus on standardization and ensure that we are able to structure that better. So AI, what we see, is going to transform the way we work, and it is not a standalone. So unlike BIM or any of these things, AI is something which is part of a larger ecosystem. It is going to affect all of us. So like when we move from, let's say, 2D hand-drawn CAD to computer CAD drawings, the clients did not have to change because they still got drawings, they still review drawings. But now with AI and BIM, all of the even our clients would need to learn how should they consume some of these information. And at some point of time, we would start uh, questioning, do we still need a CAD drawing or do we need a pure three BIM model? So there would be different things that would come out of it. Now, when it comes to AI, there are a few principles which are integral to the success on how we kind of look at AI. And we may not have standards, but we do need principles. And the principles are around the fact that, let's say, it needs to help us as humans to do our job in a better way. We should be able to trust the information that it generates. We should be able to trust the people who generate it. And at the end, we should be able to, let's say, deliver a better outcome for us. And what is also important when you talk about AI or any platform, you have to kind of evaluate, okay, how is the transparency being recorded? Is there an accountability in there? Is there a reliability in the outcome that you say? Is it safe and secure? Because let's say a lot of us would work on government confidential projects. So we need to ensure that there is a certain level of transparency and security in whatever we do. And that is where a lot of these, let's say, you cannot work with fly-by-night operators or organizations which may be here today, which may not be there tomorrow. So there are some things that you need to work on. Now, what is important is we generate a lot of data, right? So we generate drawings, we generate models, and then, but as of today, majority of that data is not something that we use. We only use drawings. So we need to get better at structuring our data so that whatever we get out of it, we can trust. So, like this is Kurt Leonard, who is a futurist, and he was presenting earlier this year in one of the conference in Middle East, and he said AI can only work for you if you have a source of truth or agreed sources of truth, wherein you know that the information that is being fed into your AI algorithms is validated. Because if it is not validated with the right information, the outcome that comes out of it, it is of no use. So we really need to pay a lot of effort, and again, the standards help us do that, right? So if you look at the ISO 19650, it actually has a structured governance and information management and reporting mandates, right? So when you go from, let's say, strategic to design to concept design to spatial to technical, or in your language, if we go from feasibility design to detailed technical design, then it has what we call soft landing. So there is a need to validate requirements at each of those stage and then propose that. And with AI, if we are able to capture all of that data in a structured manner, store it in a single location, then you can use data from previous projects to help you plan future projects. And that is something which I believe is of significant importance. Sorry, sorry. So I don't know, something is going wrong, but okay. So The future of data is, as we say, accessible, connected, and has to be useful. And only then AI can work. Again, standards and standardization are integral to making it accessible, to making it useful, and to be able to connect it. So it is absolutely important that you spend that amount of time and effort that it is required to ensure that you're storing your data, you're centralizing your data, you're structuring it in and enforcing a certain level of rigor and schemas in there. We can with that work, you can certainly democratize how you use that, right? So you necessarily don't need to put or create drawings, right? We can create dashboards. We can actually connect those data sources to a large language models and have a conversation. Oh, what is the quantity of concrete in that particular model or that particular building? And what is the quantity of, let's say, reinforcement required? So all of that can be done. So there is a possibility for us to reimagine how we work and how some of those decisions are made, provided we put effort in each of these stages, and only then we can unlock the true potential that AI has to offer us in the AEC industry and our projects. Now, what is important is that for us, it is something that all of us have to work together, and that is where we believe that it is important that we have an open ecosystem where there are a set of APIs and integration services that can help you integrate with your ERP systems or your finance systems or any other databases, and then also have work closely with standards or the bodies that develop those standards, whether it is Building Smart or OGC or ISO or CFOSO. All sectors need to continue investing in standardization. And then the software technology providers also have, I would say, a responsibility to collaborate with each other and provide technology stack which integrates with each other and helps you minimize the time and effort that you need to put in. Now, towards the end, I want to talk about a few more things, which is something that, so all of these are questions, and then we said, okay, what does this mean for us? So earlier this year, I had the opportunity to co-author a paper with RICS and few others, which I'll share the link to the paper with you. You can have a read it. It's split into three different articles in terms of we're looking how can we use AI better, what are the problems that AI can help us solve, and how do we manage risk? And we titled it as the wicked problems in construction. And we kind of looked at various things in these paper, and this was an attempt to actually understand what is the maturity of AI and its adoption in our industry, and what are the different things that are happening, whether not just within Autodesk, but outside Autodesk, and what are different companies doing, and what are the areas that they are investing. Now, we titled it Wicked Problems because there are a few problems that are inherent to our industry, right? So we have a skill shortage, and then there is a lot of construction waste. Construction has high emissions. We have low productivity. Now, this is applicable globally, whether you go to India or Europe or even South Africa. I'm sure you might say, oh, this is familiar. We also have these issues. And why do we call these as wicked problems? Because you cannot solve any of them in isolation, right? For us to, let's say, solve, let's say, high emission. High emission is a result because there is too much waste. Why is there too much waste? Because we are not as productive. Why are we not as productive? Because we have a skill shortage. So all of these are interdependent and interconnected problems which cannot be solved by one in itself. And that is where we believe AI can actually help in addressing some of these problems only if we put in effort in standards and standardization. And all of these are interconnectivity. So what we need to now think of is how can we strategically use AI and address wicked problems in our industry. So we could probably have a longer conversation sometime in future in terms of what are those wicked problems in the South African construction industry and what can we do differently with AI, right? What are the efficient applications of AI? What are the various models which are relevant for it? Not just large language models, but computer visions and many more things. How can it help us be more sustainable? Now, over the last few years, what we've seen is since AI has come in, the adoption of AI on sustainability has actually increased. So this is from the Autodesk Design and Make report, which was published a few weeks back, where AI and sustainability 2 years back was an ambition. They say, oh, we need to look at it. But now we see more and more people are actually investing and looking at how they can continue and integrate AI. But then the question is, okay, where do I get started? What do I do? So in that paper, what we kind of try to do is we kind of put forward a proposal on the different dimensions of suitability of AI, and this is something that you can also try. So we put forward these three dimensions. We said, okay, let's look at complexity, additionality, and data availability. So these three dimensions are that, okay, first question you need to ask is, okay, is the problem complex enough, right? Because AI really works best if it is complex. If it needs to integrate different data sources together, that is where AI really excels. And then uh, when we use AI, is it going to add to what we do, or we as humans could do it much better, right? So if we can do that same job in a better way, we shouldn't be investing our effort doing it with AI. And instead, so we have to look at that. And the third is, okay, do we have the data that is available to ensure that AI is able to give an output which we can rely on, which we can validate on, and which we can then take it forward. So whatever you want to do, your use cases, you can try and can evaluate your use cases along these three dimensions. And so these could be from a personal use cases, your project use cases, your organization use cases, or anything, right? So, and if you kind of, when you do your analysis, if it comes very high, so if it is on the top, let's say right corner, then you should definitely invest in AI and try and figure out how you want to do it. If it adds value, then also you should do it. If the other thing is, if whatever you're doing is repetitive in nature, then you should definitely try and see, okay, what is the role that generative AI and let's say uh, automation and parametric design can offer in that on your projects or on the work that you do on a personal basis or on things. So like one of my use cases way back is I was learning Dutch, and I only had 6 weeks. And my teachers, they said, oh, you cannot learn Dutch in 6 weeks. So I actually asked ChatGPT, this was in 2023, if you can help me put together a learning program. And it actually helped me to do that learning program in 6 weeks. And then I went back and they said, okay, we can try it. So it added to my capabilities. It was a high impact for me. And although it was not repetitive, but it was significant for me to invest. So it really helped me. So this framework is something that can help you as well. So we can have a detailed conversation on this sometime in future. But then what we did was, where can AI kind of help in these three dimensions? In the comp and the wicked problems, we looked at, okay, it can definitely help in reducing our environmental impact because it is complex enough, the problem is large enough, there is a lot of data available which we can connect. When it comes to safety and skill shortages as well, it can help us because it can, let's say, one is it is complex enough because there is a diverse set of skill set that we need across our industry, and it can then be kind of whatever we do, it adds to that objective. And there are large volume of structured and unstructured data which we can definitely use. And then construction productivity is, I would say, a no-brainer that if we kind of because for us to use AI, we have to put effort in standards and standardization, which can then help us in automation, which can then help us in construction productivity. Like the Singapore example that I talked about, where they saw 20%, let's say, improvement in their construction productivity purely by IDD, and obviously AI would further help and do that. Now, what is also happening, let's say, it's not just how AI can assist you, but now there are assistants to help you as well. So let's say many of you are using your AI note-taking assistants to take notes from these, let's say, conversations. Now, similarly, what you would see is like, let's say our Office applications have Copilot. So the Autodesk applications are also soon going to have their own AI assistant. So there is now an AI assistant in ACC, which can help you, let's say, analyze your specifications. There is going to be an AI assistant, which is going to help you talk to your drawings. So there are many more assistants that would help you in your day-to-day work. So you should see assistance coming all over, and it all depends on you on how you would want those assistants to help you in your day-to-day work. Now, some of the lessons that we've learned from our past journey is that standardization is non-negotiable. You have to put in efforts in standardizing your process, validating that process, ensure that you have open data exchange schemas, uh, ensure your quality. So data quality is much more higher because let's say at the end, let's say when we are doing 2D drawings, you would print a drawing and then you'll say, oh, let's just change this color to this. And then at site, it may not have so much impact, but when you are trying to use AI with a large data source, it is not going to help if it's not standardized. And at the end, it should help us in our day-to-day work. So it should be assisting us, and it is not going to definitely replace us. So we will need. So Peter talked about attracting skill. Now, the AI skills are something which will be applicable to any industry. So, whatever skill you acquire on AI is going to help you wherever you go and should help our industry as well to attract new engineers and new ways of working where we're not just drawing drawings or creating reports, but we are now, let's say, creating outcomes. And then whatever we do, it should be scalable and aligned to the outcome that we want. Now, at the end, I would wrap up with a few things in terms of what can you, as engineer, gain out of this? How can you benefit? So, like I started off as a design engineer. I had no clue that I would be here 20 years down the line when I joined civil engineering. But you have to just learn and adapt, and you have to also have a conversation with your clients around BIM and the need for BIM. As I said, BIM is better information management to kind of showcase that these are the ways that it can help you ensure that your organizations and your projects are now adopting, let's say, ISO 19650 as a standard, and then also use technologies which have democratized some of these standards. So it works out of the box with unified workflows, and invest in skills, invest in your personal professional development. There is always going to be something new that is going to be released. And the only way then you can figure out if it helps you or not is by doing it. So learn by doing it, use it, and then you decide whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, don't go ahead, but try it. Don't shy away from trying and learning. So learn anything and everything that comes your way. One of the core is ensure that your organizations, your projects are using a CDE environment to collaborate and store your data and share your data, because that is going to be integral in the success of leveraging AI. Like many of you who are using Copilot and using, let's say, SharePoint and stuff, it can do a lot more if your information is within in that environment. So do it. And as the theme of SAIC is growing together, this is a collective journey, not for you as an engineer, but SAIC should join forces with technology providers, public organizations like owners and industry bodies to ensure that the national mandates and standards are shaped around some of these core principles and are able to kind of drive incentives around it. Now, when it comes to personal learning and development, there are a lot of let's say, professional accreditation programs that you can look at. So, Building Smart International actually has a professional certification program, which is available in other parts of the world. And I'm sure we can kind of discuss in terms of how it can be made available within the South African context. But then there are programs which are for entry level to foundation level, management level to practitioner level. And all of these programs have, let's say, the fundamentals of BIM and Open BIM embedded in here, and these certifications are, let's say, relevant globally, right? So if you're certified on something like this, you can kind of use it on your projects and tell your client, yeah, I'm certified. So they certainly have a lot more value. So globally, let's say, currently around 25,000 odd people are certified or something like this. And when we talk about practitioner, now practitioner programs, so let's say technology providers have their own practitioner programs, right? So let's say Autodesk has their own certification program, and there are different level of certifications. Many of you may or may not have, but you should also explore that, because then you have double certification from a professional development standpoint, which helps you and helps your own organizations as well to work globally, not just in South Africa, but a global perspective. So let's say there is a certification from Revit or structure or mechanical, electrical, and civil 3D. So a lot of these certifications are available, which you can start learning and seeing what it means. So there would be many more certifications on AI which would come in. So I'm expecting within a year or so, you should see some of those things in there as well. And just to wrap up one more thing, uh, so this is a fairly famous African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And let's say the SAIC theme is growing together. And in that context, one of the questions that I asked, okay, is there a way that we can go faster and go together? And I was looking for some examples, and that is where I'm really fascinated by F1. And this is one example where we are going fast and together. So these 22 people are changing some core components in less than 2 seconds. So there are things that we can do, all of us can do together. So all of you joining this session is learning together. And now we need to figure out how can we translate this whole practice into our industry and see how we can maximize the value that we gain out of AI. So just to end, I would say let's go far and fast together and try to make this a better place with the effort that are putting on standards and standardization. Thank you. Thank you very much. And happy to connect with you on LinkedIn or otherwise. If you have any questions, happy to also answer them.
Thank you very much indeed, Jugal. That was absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for giving up your time and joining us today at the SAICE IT division. Let's have a look and see if we've got any questions in our chat. Okay, we've got one here from, I think, Hannes. Is there any indication of the extent to which these concepts have been integrated into curriculums of the information technology and engineering faculties of South Africa's universities? I guess that's a bit difficult for you from the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah.
Well, so I had some, so one of my friends actually is a professor in the University of Johannesburg, and I met him a few years back. I was in South Africa quite often in my role in Hesconic. Last time I was there was prior to COVID. And we did discuss integrating some of the BIM and all of that in the courses there. But honestly, I'm not aware of the latest developments in that. I am involved in shaping some of the curriculums in universities in the Netherlands and TU Delft and others, but not aware of what's happening out there.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question we have is from Armand. Are there any successful implementation of these systems worldwide? And would this require some form of a PPP or private and government working in silos?
Implementation of AI adoption?
Doesn't say, it just says implementation of these systems.
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of successful implementation. So let's say when it comes to BIM and things, obviously all of these initiatives that we talk about is a PPP kind of work, right? So public owners, private entities, whether it's consultants or contractors, have a collaborative role to play, and only then as many of these systems will succeed. No one entity can do everything. Right. So yeah, if you're a contractor, so let's say in US, the contractors are far ahead of their clients in implementing some of these things. But in other parts of the world, let's say in Europe, a lot of owners are now mandating how they would want people to work, how they should deliver information or create information. And we've seen that the projects and programs and the organizations where they work together are succeeding significantly. There are lots of experiments happening around AI, and because let's say OpenAI has primarily democratized AI, right? So everyone has AI on our devices, personal devices, or on Copilot and all of that. So a lot of organizations are also investing it. So I couldn't share a few examples. There are a few examples where organizations have integrated, let's say, Civil 3D and Revit with ACC and ChatGPT to kind of have this connection and then integrated. But there hasn't been a scalable implementation in the industry yet, but there are lots of effort going in. And we are working with many of them closely to also ensure that the platform fulfills the requirements for these industries. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Next question we have is from Jeff. What are the responsibilities dash liability implications of AI systems? With development of technical standards, that's SANS, which is South African National Standards, and introduction of CAD and FEA, there has been widespread debate about this. AI is probably much more complex because the source of information on which decisions are based is much more dispersed and difficult to pin down or understand.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I would kind of say that this is something that is a point of constant debate and discussion. And you're absolutely right; it is much more complex, and that is where one of the things that let's say Autodesk is working on is developing transparency cards, wherein there are let's say where you get information on where what this model was trained on, where it came from, and so that you can rely on it. And that is, I think, something that is going to be absolutely integral. And if you see, let's say, one of the way that we rely on many products is they have a product label, right, where they say, okay, this has so much, let's say, wheat in it, so much sugar in it. So we have to probably get to that level where the AI systems and platform that we use have that kind of label. I can share the link with those transparency cards that we are working on, and what we should do see is more and more systems should have those transparency cards. But what is essential is, let's say when it comes to liability, humans are going to be liable at the end. AI systems are not going to be made liable. So humans will have to stay in the loop. They are the ones who will have to sign all of these drawings, and it has to be validated. So the core engineering knowledge that all of us have is still integral, right? We cannot escape that, right? So we should be able to validate what comes out of it. So I remember one of my first experiment way back in November of 2022 when ChatGPT was launched was to look at, okay, what does ChatGPT know about ISO 19650? Because I knew what ISO 19650 was, so I was trying to validate it. So it has to be pre-validated, and there is going to be a constant debate. But what would be good from a South African perspective is to look at what others are doing. So look at the EU AI Act and see what is it that you can adapt or adopt from there rather than reinventing the wheel, because some of the trust principles that are laid out in there are foundational and fundamentals, and that doesn't vary whether you're in Europe or in South Africa or anywhere else.
Thank you very much for that, Hugo. It looks like there's a follow-on question from Jeff as well. And he said, I think you mentioned the importance of trust was stressed. How does this work and how can this be built? Trust requires fundamental knowledge of the person or system one is working with. All systems are so distributed in terms of knowledge sources that I am unsure how trust would be or develops.
Yeah, again, a great question, and something that is likely to take a few years for us to uh, kind of figure out what to do and how to do. And I just want to share my screen again to share something that helps you in this question on trust. So this is, let's say, we talked about trust, and you can see that the Autodesk now has something called an Autodesk Trust Center, which did not exist earlier, but now because of AI, there is a lot of emphasis on trust. And I talked about the transparency card. So this is something, or initiatives of these are something that should help us, let's say, instate the trust that we have in some of the systems and platforms, right? So that it doesn't end up being a black box, right? So let's say now there are transparency card around, let's say, generative design in Revit, and you should see what is the feature functionality, what is the source of it, what is the primary technique of it, was personal data used to do this? Is a data source relevant? Was a file format relevant? So these labels, I think we should see more and more of these coming in. And if you see one of these, then that is where we know that we can trust some of the information that comes out of it. You should also look at the, as I said, the AI Pact and all of these. So have a look at this information, and this is going to be
Jugal, I think we've lost your sound. Jugal, I don't know if you can hear us, but we've lost your sound. Yeah, I think possibly Jugal's just going to try connecting again. Just wait a minute or two for him to connect. In the meantime, if some of you would like to type some questions in, then we'll be able to ask Jugal when he hopefully reconnects again. I'll just give him a couple more minutes to see if we can get the reconnection to Jugal.
Hello.
Are you back, Jugal?
Yes, sorry. There's
Ah,
some issue
okay.
with my network. I lost my connectivity.
Yeah, we figured something like that had happened. Yeah. So we've been just waiting because we figured you'd reconnect. Are you able to put your camera on maybe? And then we can kind of move to one of the next questions.
Just give me a second. I am actually logged onto my phone now.
Okay, well, we can do it without camera. That'll be fine
Yeah,
because you might
yeah,
use a bit of bandwidth. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for continuing with us. Um, we were talking then about the importance of trust, and I think you were near the end of your explanation on that one. Can you remember
Yes,
your
yes, that's
train of
correct.
thought?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was sharing my screen, and yeah,
Mm,
that was kind of towards the end of it. Yes.
okay. And we also have a question there. To what extent are AI systems specific to the contexts in which they are developed? The countries in which AI are developed typically aim to maximize productivity. But for example, in South Africa, we may well want to maximize employment, which is an almost directly opposite goal.
Again, a great
Mm,
question, and I
mm,
completely agree that productivity may not always be the driver to implement AI or sustainability or so there may be different aspects or different outcomes that you would want to gain out of implementing AI, and it has to be contextualized from a regional context and even from a sector or industry context. Because what it certainly does is that to maximize the potential of AI, people in that sector or industry will need a different skill, right? So like when we talk about wicked problems, I'm sure there are wicked problems in South Africa that you would want to address and which are not being addressed currently because of its sheer complexity. And that is where AI can help. And at the end, it will help, let's say, improve the whole employability and possibly create more jobs as well. Because what AI does is it's not necessarily cannibalizing job. It's just that it's shifting the capabilities that you need to a different space. Right? So let's say when we looked at industrialized construction or industrialization, a lot of these car manufacturers moved to robotics, right? So people who actually knew how to screw or use nuts and bolts, they had to be reskilled on how to operate these robotic machines. And those who were able to, let's say, manage and maintain the various lathe machines and all of those had to kind of understand how to build those robots. And so the capabilities shifted. So every technology evolution requires a different shift of capabilities, and it creates newer jobs. Obviously, the older jobs will not exist, and that is where upskilling and personal development are absolutely important.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got a few more minutes. I'm just scrolling down. I don't think we've got any more on the screen, but while our participants maybe think of a few more questions, I have a question that we quite often get asked in the SAICE IT division. You mentioned in your presentation about obviously the move or the shift from drawings into models. And then the question is then, do you see us using both in the future or only models? And then if so, what's your reflections or your views on um, the professional responsibilities when you've got a lot of people contributing to a model?
Again, a great and a relevant question. And what we see right now is that models and drawings coexist. So models are now a means of developing those drawings and extracting those deliverables, which are in turn being validated and signed off. Now, there are countries now which are now looking at models to be a legal document. South Africa being one of those first ones. Estonia and few others have now looked at, let's say, approving their construction or building permits through models. And then in the US, AASHTO, which is the Federal Highways Standards Agency, is now moving towards making models as a legal document. So when a model becomes a legal document, it needs to go through various validation processes, and that validation framework will need to be put in place because currently, let's say our validation framework in our industry is signing those drawings. So as long as you see those 4 or 5 signatures on your drawing, you trust and you rely on those drawings, right? And we need to get to that level of validation from a model standpoint as well. So it has to go through that journey of validation. What that looks like, there are some steps that has been done. So let's say Building Smart has something called IDS, which is Information Delivery Specification, which is a means of validating what your model has. Autodesk has validation tools as well. So there are validation tools, but there aren't tools where you can kind of sign off your model at this point of time. But there's still some work to be done, and that is something that ideally, let's say, is part of that PPP framework where all the stakeholders come together to define how we want to do this together.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer, Jugal. I don't see any more questions in the chat. We're sort of coming up to the end of our time allocation. So if I don't see any more questions, then I think we'll move to wrap up this afternoon's session. So I'd like to, on behalf of the SAICE IT division, I'd like to thank Jugal very much indeed for giving up his time and also the time involved in the preparation of such a wonderfully informative webinar. It's been absolutely excellent. And I'd also, of course, like to thank all the participants for giving up their time. And I'm sure that you would consider that was time well spent with Jugal this afternoon. And lastly, I'd like to thank Debbie Debbie Bestling, who is our Secretary of the IT Division, for basically connecting all the people together and for setting up the backbone for the webinar this afternoon. So thank you very much, Debbie. So with that, the SAICE IT Division would like to wish you all a very good afternoon and a good evening, depending on which part of the world you might be in. Hope to see you all again soon at one of the SAICE Division, SAICE IT Division webinars where we discuss this type of topics of this nature. So thank you very much indeed, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you all in person someday. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jugal. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.